Hey, Rebel Rouser. I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, episode number 1519. You get that high and you start to lose track a little bit. I think that's my greatest fear as far as this podcast goes, is misnumbering a podcast, because, I mean, at this rate, the idea of going back through a lot of episodes to renumber and get it right, oh, that's kind of scary. But nope. We are really at 1,519 numbered episodes, and thank you so much for joining me for this particular one. Thank you so much for subscribing to the show as well, so that you make sure you get it wherever you like to get a hold of it. And today we're going to talk about episode 9. We are just about 1 month into the filming of episode 9. The anniversary is actually tomorrow, September 1st. And we are 476 days, count them, 476 days away from the premiere of episode 9 in theaters. So they've got a little time to work on this thing. And so far, most of the filming seems to have taken place in Pinewood Studios, but they have started on location filming, though it's very modest by comparison, in Black Park, which is a very large public park that is adjacent to Pinewood Studios, so, you know, just a hop, skip, and a jumping away. And also a quote-unquote secret location a few miles outside of London, according to The Sun, which is a tabloid paper in Britain. And they published a whole bunch of photos, but they didn't actually say where this secret location was. I don't know if they're just trying to say, hey, we know where it is and you don't, ha ha ha. Or, I mean, it's not really a secret location if the Sun was able to find it and somehow get a whole bunch of photos, or if somebody was able to send them a whole bunch of photos, however it broke down. Anyway, they're not in far-flung places yet, like Abu Dhabi or Venezuela or Reykjavik or anything like that. So yeah, it's still humble beginnings, as it were, for the filming of episode 9 so far. And probably the biggest news from episode 9 this past week or so, it's been 10 days since our last update, would have to do with casting announcements. First of all, Dominic Monaghan, who was one of the Hobbits in the Lord of the Rings movies, and also who worked with J.J. Abrams and his cohorts on Lost, has managed to find his way into Star Wars Episode 9. Of course, no word on the character he's going to play. And, you know, you see a, white guy showing up in the cast and your brain kind of goes to First Order or something like that. But we do have to remember that Simon Pegg was inside Unkar Plutt in The Force Awakens. And so just because they're casting some random white guy from Britain doesn't mean, is he British or is he, oh gosh, I'll have to look. Anyway, anybody with a foreign accent who, could be in the First Order, well, yeah, not necessarily the case. Also, Matt Smith, who was in Doctor Who and the Netflix show The Crown, has also been cast in an unidentified but possibly important role, according to the Hollywood trades. And also we have sort of, backhanded confirmation. Greg Grunberg, who played Snap Wexley in The Force Awakens, had said during San Diego Comic-Con that he's not allowed to say anything, but that he grew his beard out, and the only reason he would have grown his beard out was for something film-related, and he just can't talk about it yet. Well, supposedly some outlet confirmed via his representation that he is in fact returning as Snap Wexley in the movie. And I mean, really, it wouldn't be all that much of a surprise if that were the case, because, it's J.J. Abrams, and Greg Grunberg is one of his closest friends in general, to say nothing of his acting chops in general. So yeah, it's a very likely probability that Greg Grunberg will be back for episode 9. Now, we are also coming into the end of the year, which means that we are starting to get into a season where we're going to have, quote-unquote, important movies premiering in theaters. And as a result, any actors that are in Star Wars movies who are also in these movies are getting interviewed, because, you can't talk to these folks about their movies alone. You have to talk to them about Star Wars too. And so Domhnall Gleeson and Oscar Isaac were recently interviewed about their movies that they have coming out, and naturally they had a thing or two to say about episode 9 as well, and we will get into that after the break. Stay tuned. Hey, Rebel Rouser. Have you ever wanted to take a land speeder for a spin, or maybe even the Millennium Falcon itself? Well, here's the next best thing. You can make your own custom Solo a Star Wars story inspired Nissan with the best in galaxy customizer. Just go to sw7x7.com/custom to customize and share your own Star Wars inspired vehicle. And don't forget, Solo a Star Wars story is coming home on digital September 14th, Blu-ray September 25th, and new on 4K Ultra HD as well. Welcome back. All right, so Domhnall Gleeson, and I've been saying it Domhnall, and apparently it's Domhnall, so we've got another pronunciation thing here corrected on Star Wars 7x7, so thank you to the corrections department for setting me straight on that one. Domhnall Gleeson talking about having read the entire script for Episode 9, not just his own parts, interestingly enough. He has read the entire script for Episode 9, and he says that he regrets doing so in a recent interview because he said the nightmare is that he would fall asleep on public transport and have the script there and it suddenly be stolen, or that he's on an airplane and talking in his sleep and somebody's there recording it. So he's very funny about the whole thing, but he does say it is going to be epic, and now we know that he's actually in a very good position to know that it's going to be a particularly epic movie because he has read the whole darn script. So there you go. And Oscar Isaac, in being interviewed, talked about the resistance and likened it to Che Guevara and their freedom fighters, where they would come down out of the hills and attack what was the empire for them, which was the United States. So, politics aside, the whole situation of having a group of rebels hiding out in the mountains and then coming down to attack this, massively equipped, well-equipped force that is taking command and control of everything. Well, that is apparently the way that Oscar Isaac has described the resistance, and says it's pretty ragged at this point. And you don't know if he's necessarily talking about the resistance as it stands at the end of The Last Jedi, or if he's actually talking about what the situation is in Episode 9. And this is one of the things that we've talked about on the podcast, and the whole idea of, are we jumping ahead a number of years, or are we really following right on the heels of The Last Jedi? The logical conclusion seems that they would have to be jumping ahead if the end result of the movie is going to be that the resistance overthrows the First Order. You would have to think that, based on the way the resistance was decimated by the end of The Last Jedi, that they would need some time to recoup. And they kind of give you thematically the idea that it's going to be a few years because of the little kid that you see at the end of The Last Jedi looking up at the sky with his little resistance code ring and being able to use the force to pull the broom to him, right? The implication of that is that that's the next generation of fighters that's going to attack the First Order, but they're going to need some time to be able to grow up enough to get onto the battlefield. So all of that being said, it seems like, I don't know, you can take Oscar Isaac's comments for what you will, and you have to know that either A, they've been trained not to say very much at all, and probably B, to get us here and there with a little bit of misinformation perhaps. So I don't know. I don't know how to take that comment. I'm personally thinking it feels like where it was at the end of The Last Jedi, and not so much where they must be at sometime in Episode 9. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, so please do chime in wherever you happen to be seeing this episode of the show. And that is going to do it for this episode of the show. Tomorrow we'll be talking about Star Wars Resistance, because there's been a number of reveals about that show. And hey, stuff with Star Wars Resistance also bears upon our sequel movies too, so you might want to be checking that out even if you're not necessarily the anime cartoon fan of sorts. But that's all right. To each their own, and yet there's a little information you'll probably want to hear regardless of what you happen to like in Star Wars. Anyway, so again, that's going to do it, and thank you again for subscribing, and if you don't subscribe yet, hey, subscribe. Why not? Get the next episode and the next one and the next one after that. It's every day, and it's been every day for more than 4 years. So, I'm keeping going, and I want you to join me. And if you really appreciate getting it every single day, then I hope you'll consider putting a tip in the metaphorical tip jar. Not exactly metaphorical, just digital, at patreon.com/SW7X7. That's patreon.com/SW7X7. And so it just remains for me to say thank you again so much for joining me for this episode, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
Podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2018 Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.